The paper, Lie Chains, Constrained Labor and Rights Atrocity in Thailand's Fishery Production, authored by Humane Rights Look, HRW, was liberated at a press briefing at the Europe Parliament Tuesday. It asserts how, in spite the Thailand by the government's pronouncements to restrain inhumane rights atrocity on executive board Thailand fishery boats, they stay common. Consumer in Europe, the US, and Japan should be sure how their seafood of Thailand didn't engage frequented or constrained labor, told Brad Adams, Asia CEO at Humane Rights Look. Still, in spite top section commitments by the Thailand by the government to pure up the fishery production, problems are wild. The paper notes how both of the EU and the US include undertaken steps to penalize the Thailand by the government for offensive practices. Adams forced West governments to heap blood pressure on Thailand to provide how reforms are not just box dressing. No one should be fooled by regulation how see nice on document but are not correctly forced, Adams told in a click produce. Same EU and US promptly requirement to growth blood pressure on Thailand to defend the rights, public health and security of fishers. Munkal Sucharoenkana, a member of Thailand's Domestic Fish Resources Associate, said Humane Rights Look how the production had utilized illicit labor in the history but no much longer did. Yet now things include modified fully. Down there is no Operation Love in the history. The consumer of the USA and Europe can eat our seafood. All is penalty. Each issue has been flat by the present by the government. The boats are proper and the workers are proper. Down there is no more than constrained labor. Thailand's Ministry of Overseas Sphere named the concoction sweep and unfounded. Same story skipped the predominant facts on the land and deliberately neglected progresses, favorable developments and efforts taken by the Thailand by the government, the ministry told in a declaration. Constrained and kicked on boats fishermen, frequently of neighboring Myanmar and Cambodia, afflict of impoverished work facility, recruiting processes, regulation of occupation, and production practices how put already sensitive immigrant workers in offensive situations, and frequently hold them down there, on to the paper. In a live video manufactured to escort the paper, Nam Hak, a ex-fisher of Cambodia, said HRW how he was supposedly deceived following Creature said how same DB work in a minnow preserving plant. On arrive in the nation he, on in some cheated immigrant workers, was kicked and constrained on a fishery ship. It is not precise of his live video evidence while he was undertaken on board. Several of us had never been on a ship up, he told. We were frightened. He told he envisaged flee but mind how if he tested to keep his captors would pay human beings to search me downward. They would hit me up and break my chief, later email me injured behind to the ship. In the preparing of the paper, HRW says it interviewee nearly 250 present and ex-immigrant fishermen, as Thailand by the government officials, ship owners, their captains and some figures related in the production. Reforms. The Thailand by the government answered by representing registered documents, named local as rose cards, for immigrant workers on executive board fishery boats, on in established practices to check sea vessels' crews while outgoing and back to seaport. In a click produced to mark the paper, HRW says how these measures include introduced to a decrease in several of the lowest atrocity, such as captains murder team members at ocean, paper inspections are at top fluent and frequently the fishermen's rose cards, and pay, are frequently deducted by a vessel's official importance how their capacity to go among jobs is rigorously bounded. Tuesday's paper as well alleges the Rose Map framework as well bonds the fishers' legislative statute to particular locations and patronage whose permit they requirement to changing jobs, the paper explains, creation and environmental mature for misuse. He told how reforms established in 2015 enable immigrant workers to select their patronage. In general, I believe, patronage include to consider their labor really so differently they will select her to some boats, he told. Yet, he added how slim asset indicate how the goal of check all the nation's fishery boats, he estimates about 11,000, would be unfeasible to reach. If we run a lot of inspections, quality assurance will fall. And down there will be a really length queuing. So we include set up the new framework by assessing prospective risks. For sample boats that include a big sum of team or such who had issue in labor question up. These human beings will be verified a lot and more than frequently. Accountable, atrocity go on a employee who ended up on a ship not willingly and who is incapable to get off since down there is several threat or risk. It could be natural, or it could be one of these some indicators of constrained labor. These are things love retaining of documents, obligation slavery, undue overtime work, retention of salary, wherever you include such facility, thou ve got constrained labor.